give somebody else all on with their side. Okay. What's this?
Nope.
He doesn't start. Find out whether they're getting it, so I think it's legal. I think.
All right, 12 o'clock. Welcome to Emergency Response Committee. And I need to entertain a motion to reconvene.
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and second, and we'll do a roll call, which will tell us who's present at the same time. Mr. Matthews.
Aye.
Mr. Blau.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. And all are present. To have a motion to reopen item number 1, discussion possible action, set time, date, and place to reconvene should technical difficulties arise.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Mr. Matthews.
Aye.
Mr. Blau.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. So what would be your pleasure to reconvene should we have technical difficulties?
I make a motion for Friday at noon in this room.
Second. Motion is second. I believe that to be May 1st. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Motion and second. Mr. Matthews.
Aye.
Mr. Blau. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. Thank you.
Noon.
Yeah. Would entertain a motion to reopen item number 3, discussion, review, and possible action regarding presentation from emergency management.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Mr. Matthews.
Aye.
Mr. Blau.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. Updated information and ongoing President Trump's presidential major disaster declaration, DR 4530 COVID-19, including all states, for public assistance category for emergency protective measures, still in place. Center for Disease Control specific guidance is still a recommendation of wearing a cloth mask when around other people, particularly in public, and all organizations continue to use the business continuity of operations plan. Oklahoma is still under a state of emergency as the declaration from March 5th and a health emergency declaration from April 2nd. Oklahoma County has received CARES Act stimulus funding, and this is not specific disaster declaration related funding. It is a separate funding source. Mayor Holt of Oklahoma City has announced that shelter-in-place guidance remains in place through April 30th for City of Oklahoma City, and Norman and Tulsa are also in the same situation. Updated numbers, Oklahoma is now looking at 3,473 positive test results. That is 63 additional since yesterday, and 214 virus-related deaths, which is 7 additional since yesterday. 95% of those are 50 years old and older. And the largest numbers are in Oklahoma County with 30, Tulsa County with 33, Cleveland County with 28. 67% of the fatalities 67% of fatalities had at least one comorbidity situation, and 79 fatalities were in long-term care or nursing home cases. And we have had 86 seasonal flu deaths since September 1st of 2019. There's one more from the previous report added to that. 47,984 tests have been provided as of the 23rd of April. That's state and private labs, and now 70 counties in Oklahoma with positive cases. 2,319 Oklahomans have recovered of the known ill with COVID-19, and 656 cumulative virus-related hospitalizations as of the 27th. Per State Department of Health, 283 people are currently hospitalized, and 71 of those in ICU. Test sites now continue operation around the state. Hours of operation and prerequisite information varies, and urge people to contact State Health Department through their website for specific instructions or information regarding those test sites. And the Oklahoma City County Health Department test site is still operational. Appointment is required, and the triage line is 425-4489. OU Medicine, not State Health or City County Health Department, open today. The drive-through test site at the OU Health Center over on Northeast 10th. And pre-screening appointment and password is required for persons attending that location. Online symptom tracker is still available through State Department of Health, which is obviously, as we keep reminding everyone, a key documentation factor in the reopening process for monitoring of numbers. And we are under a gubernatorial declaration of a public health emergency. Elective surgeries began on April 24th based on the tiered acuity schedule. And minor medical procedures and non-emergency dental procedures scheduled to resume April 30th for those with appropriate and adequate PPE. Oklahoma has met presidential parameters to allow for phase 1 reopening, and that reopening began April 24th with social distancing, particularly for the elderly and those considered vulnerable, to continue. Personal care businesses can reopen. State parks and outdoor recreation areas open. May 1st, restaurant dining rooms, theaters, gyms, and sports venues, places of worship may reopen if continuing to use social distancing and sanitation protocols, and tattoo parlors with appointments only. During phase 1, visits to senior living facilities and hospitals are still prohibited. Bars, schools, organized sporting events, and camps still remain closed. If the hospital incident rates remain manageable for 14 days, we will then be able to move into phase 2. And we stress to check and know what local jurisdictional guidance may be in place. Projected peak for Oklahoma has passed for the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, and those projections and current practices still include full social distancing through the end of May. Jurisdictions receiving positive case addresses, this is the public safety entry point and 911 systems, and apparently patient names to protect first responders. No additional personal information is being provided. Oklahoma National Guard remains on deployment with several medical-related missions, and they are assisting with the Strategic National Stockpile distribution efforts. According to the State Health Department report on correctional facilities, 19 staff members and 5 inmates have tested positive, and Oklahoma Department of Forestry Services continues to support PPE distribution throughout the state. Oklahoma County in general, 743 positive cases with 30 fatalities, and as of the 28th, there were 481 total recovered. 22 positive cases, still the latest report at Tinker Air Force Base, with restricted visitor guidance and revisions in available gates still in place. Oklahoma City County drive-through non-medical referral testing as of the 28th indicated 4,124 tests provided, with 189 positives and 313 pending. Information hotline, City County Health Department Nurse Hotline at 425-4489, and the state 24-hour hotline at 877-215-8336 remain active. Shelter operations continuing in several venues and locations around the metropolitan area. Christy Jernigan Marshall at Oklahoma County Social Services is very engaged with the planning efforts and coordination efforts for those facilities. Adjustments are being made based on current conditions and factors, obviously dynamic, and potential increase is anticipated with the reopening or the reentry into businesses and such. And caution is being exercised with the uncertainty of potential increased caseload as that illness tends to hit the homeless population after the general population. They're still watching and monitoring for any surge associated with that. Concerns over possible increased homeless numbers due to evictions resulting from overall financial situation. All shelters continuing staff and guest screening, and the Helping Hands group that we've talked about continues to work to ensure that tests are being properly performed and follow-up provided. And the telehealth providers are continuing with their physical and mental health guidance and coordinated efforts there through the telehealth system. City Rescue Mission has available designated space for symptomatic cases, but so far has not been needed due to increased homeless numbers. Some space is being repurposed, and there's designated symptomatic area is still retained and self-contained and separate from the general homeless area. Alternative care homeless shelters involving Homeless Alliance and Oklahoma County Social Services and other partners are continuing to work through budgetary planning, and they have resources currently available with additional contingencies in place. The Alternative Care Site Initiative is still a cooperative effort between Oklahoma Hospital Association, and they're working with the National Guard, and they are continuing overall outreach efforts to the homeless population who are currently not in shelter. PPE is still a concern for first responder and healthcare workers, although supplies have been arriving and backfilling is taking place, and hearing some very positive reports in that regard. City County Health Department is still requesting donations of various basic items. If you have gloves, pen lights, lab coats, face shields, etc., and would be interested in donating, you can go to the PPE donations at Oklahoma City County Health Department website. Severe weather sheltering. We saw a round of significant weather yesterday evening. The guidance still remains in place to maintain social distancing, and be sure to make your plan early, not waiting for impending severe weather, and maintain awareness. Internal to Oklahoma County government, ReadyOp continues to be emphasized. We are still in an emergency declaration from the March 25th VOCC meeting. From the Oklahoma County Court Clerk's Office, marriage licenses are still being provided, and they are to bring paperwork already prepared and make an appointment for that. Oklahoma County's Clerk's Office has shifted to a 9 a to 3 p.m. schedule. And Oklahoma County Treasurer is now taking cash payments on the third floor, one person at a time, and a mask is required. The April 28th through the door numbers were 174, which is a 47-person increase over Monday, and there were 89 inmate shuttles. VPOs and marriage licenses still continue to drive large numbers there. Emergency Management Disaster Declaration applicants briefing was participated in on April 21st, and there's going to be additional guidance coming on that as soon as it's provided to us. And we continue to work with the Office of Emergency Management on that additional grant opportunity that we talked about, Community Disaster Loan Program. Still waiting to hear back from FEMA as far as the state application in that regard. And the request for public assistance under the Federal Disaster Declaration has been submitted and is still under review. The Oklahoma County Emergency Management First Responder Personal Protective Equipment point of distribution is still in place, using all of our staff and several of our volunteers. And we actually have put in another request yesterday evening or early this morning, and expecting additional delivery tomorrow for distribution tomorrow and Friday. And to date, we've processed just short of 126,000 individual items through that. Update on court and courthouse related information. Thank you to Renee Troxel for providing this. Due to cancellation of 7 jury weeks in March, April, May, and June, the jury trial and non-jury trial schedules now include August 17th and 31st, September 14th, 21st, and 28th, and June 15th jury week proceedings have been canceled. Notable, Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps is continuing to solicit medical and non-medical volunteers. They do have 97 volunteers preparing to assist with what they call contact tracing efforts. And people interested in participating in that or volunteering are urged to contact the Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps. Warning signs and symptoms, as we discussed previously, CDC has expanded those now to include fever, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, chills, repeated shaking with chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, and a new loss of taste or smell. Personal protective measures remain consistent: frequent hand washing, covering cough or sneeze, social distancing, and staying home whenever possible. Wear a face mask when in public. Recommendation to open packages outside of the home or work area, disinfect items, and discard shipping materials without taking them into the workspace of the home. American Red Cross and Oklahoma Blood Institute are still requesting blood donors, and we still are recommending caution to be exercised with false information, avoiding social media reports and other information sources unless they're known to be credible. And there are still no reports of authorization letters for essential services or personnel being issued or required in the state. Encourage everyone to view statistics and projections realistically and to take personal responsibility and practice prudent preventative measures. Unless there's discussion or questions, that concludes my report for today.
Motion to receive report.
Second. Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Mr. Matthews? Aye. Mr. Blau?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye to receive that report. I would entertain a motion to reopen item number 4, discussion, review, and possible action regarding a presentation from VOCC departments. The VOCC departments present wishing to provide information, or if we had any?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
my thought would be, since the court clerk is sitting here, to skip down to 6.
Okay.
See that this valuable time is not wasted. So motion to reopen item 6.
Second. Got a motion and a second for item number 6. Mr. Matthews? Aye. Mr. Blau?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. Mr. Warren, thank you for joining us.
Just to put you on the spot, you got anything to say?
Keith asked me to come down and just maybe put in some input. As you all know, we're going to reopen, as Judge Courage. She had to shut down till the 15th. We'll reopen on the 18th. We'll actually bring our entire staff back on the 11th, so we get everything up to date and going smooth, get everything back on track. At that time, we'll continue to do marriage license, approximately 20-25 down on the first floor. We'll still do VPOs, approximately the same number. And then we'll still have officers coming up to get warrants up to our floor and certain things going. As you know, the criminal side is continuing and due process. So what we suggest is we're going to open on the 18th. We need to be thinking about it and making planning. As you know, each of us needs to be responsible for keeping a distance. I think every business should be thinking about how to do it. Sometimes we're going to have to encourage them. Currently, we have put people handlers down the fourth floor, down the center of the aisle. We're telling them to keep right, but I think it's going to take weeks to train people. Today, I think I saw 5 or 6 people that thought left was right and I was left. But it takes time. You got to be patient until the time. Or wouldn't get going and die that way. But what I would suggest is we need to put our assets where our needs are here at the courthouse. The 4th floor and the 5th floor, the DA's office. We're both going to be very, very busy. We're going to have a lot of traffic in this building. I've asked the other officers if they could stagger the times when their people come in, maybe 6 to 9 o'clock for a while. Or if some of them, like, which is all, someone comes in at 7, that's fine, doesn't get in the way. I have 135 employees, and then all the people that will be coming, the attorneys that will be coming to file the thing. I expect that Monday, the 18th, to be unbelievably busy. Now, we have officers at the sheriff's office, and the officers here are doing a great job. I commend them. They have helped us, and they have done outstanding work as far as keeping everybody separated and helping us control the front door. We've got one of our people down there all the time, and it's working really good. But as the traffic increases, we're going to need more help. What I would suggest is we currently have our patrol officers, and some of the ones that may be patrolling the city areas, maybe they could be more utilized if we talk to PD and get his help. but some of them on each floor, doing exactly what we're talking about, keeping the citizens social distance. All it takes an officer, please social distance, all they got to say. And then we're also going to need officers because in the courtrooms, we're going to start up with civil on the 18th, and then we've postponed the criminal juries from the 15th into August. I think it's August the 17th is the first one I released a press release, and then another one on the 31st. We'll be sending out about 1,100 jury notices for those juries, hopefully getting between 400 and 600 jurors in. So there, we're going to need some help. And what I would think, maybe some of the officers that we use for the schools, we could bring here and put 2 on each floor for temporary, just a short time. This is, once again, this is PD helping us so that we can control it, because we're not going to be able to allow all the witnesses into the courtroom. The courtrooms are small anyway. The DAs will have their staff, attorneys will have their staff, and all the hanger owners will come with trials. You have people that really don't need to be there, but they have a right. Because citizens. But they're there. And so we had officers that could help us control that out in the hallway, keep them staying social distance. It would probably be helpful to us. And currently with the staff we have of officers, we probably don't have enough. And I'm just thinking outside the box of things that we could possibly be doing. I know we got the money for, I think it's $47 million, I was told, that has gone in used for this, that reimburse us for our money. We're currently in my office, we're trying to buy hand sanitizers, tissues, wipes. So we're going to have to wipe down the courtrooms probably twice a day. But I would suggest once at noon and then at the end of the day, or do it first thing in the morning, end of the day. It's more practical. And then as the jurors sit at the same place, we're going to spread the jurors out. We're not going to have them all in the jury. We're going to spread them out through the courtroom. That way, witnesses and everybody will be outside. That's the thing right now. Judge Elliott, we're talking about it. We're still working on that plan. I know the DA's office is trying to do the same thing. Once again, the mask, and we give out masks to people. I've tried to put a plan together where jurors, I think most of them will bring their own mask. Most of them are educated people, they don't have a mask. But we still need to offer them one. And it's really not to protect them. If you think about it, I've been told that we can't spend county money on citizens. It's to protect us. The mask does not protect the wearer. It protects you from coughing and spreading it to other people. What I'm trying to protect is for clerks and the other officers that work in the other people that work in this building. So the mask idea, if we can purchase enough masks so that we can issue them out to people that we're summoning to come to this courthouse, might make sense. And we can get reimbursed for that. The only thing that the court clerk's office will probably do is the mask, for the hand solution, and for the sprays, the disinfectants, and possibly the temporary shields that we're putting out. If y'all notice, we put temporary shields in all of our offices. And these are just some of the things I was thinking of. I was sitting there writing down some notes, but if you have any questions, how we're doing things, I'll be glad to answer.
We appreciate your efforts in regard to the meetings. We know you've been meeting routinely with the judges and staff, and Renee has shared that with us, and we do appreciate your efforts in pulling together these thoughts. And a lot of energy being extended, I'm sure.
Do you plan on scheduling the filings the same way that you've done marriage licenses, et cetera, instead of the massive influx on whenever we open, whatever that Monday is?
18th is when we'll open it. It could change. Judge Courage could change. But right now, it's the 18th is when the courthouse will allow people to come upstairs. And no, it'll just be, it's going to be a lot of civil things have been on hold. Civil will now be back open. I don't see it scheduling. We'll open the doors and they'll be up there. And, what we're going to try to do, if we can get some help from the sheriff's office, then that'd be appreciated. If we can't, then I'll have some of my staff people out there. And we're trying to keep everybody at a distance. We're going to try to keep them right or left of the hallways. We're only going to allow so many in, and we've got chairs spaced out 6 foot apart against the wall, so we're going to have somebody controlling it. You come in. We've now cross-trained our entire staff in the last 4 years since I've been there. We used to have it where you had to go to a certain station and go to anybody. So we'll send them to the far end of the court clerk's office. They will line up there if they're civil, or criminal, it'll be at the other end. we'll send them far in, the next group will line up in the chairs, and we'll rotate them, and we'll be in the hallway, so it's, we're gonna do our very best to keep social distancing by using those type of ways of keeping people safe.
Are you planning on staggering your workforce to come in maybe at 7:30, 7:45, 8 o'clock?
No, we're gonna bring them all in, but what we may do is have you use the other doors, and, we split them up in A and B teams. We sent ours home for the simple reason that if one of my people in civil got sick and caught it, then that whole group would have to stay home quarantine. So if that happens, I've got a backup because we cannot shut down. And so what I'll probably do is have the A group use this front door and the B group use that door, and that way I've got about 60 people, 70 people coming in each door. And encourage them to get here a little early. Yeah.
With the additional numbers that are obviously going to be coming in on the 18th, my initial concern is the log jam at the front door, particularly if we're doing social distancing there as they come through the turnstiles and the zigzag. And that's going to then, you space those out, that's going to shove them all the way out on the sidewalk and, big spaces out there. Any input, any ideas and how you would?
We do, actually, we've started e-filing, something that I wanted to do for 4 years, but something like this sometimes pushes it forward. And we also have e-pay now where they can pay online, they can file certain things online. We have a person down the information box who would like to keep that for a while. And that way they can be down there, and anybody that comes in, we'll have somebody outside too. And when people come up, we kind of lose lawyers and citizens, we've been doing it a long time. And so if we see somebody, we'll ask them out there, because they usually come in and they're staring at the wall and trying to figure out where they want to go. So we're going to ask them, and we'll have court clerk shirts on. Can we help you? And if they show us something that can be filed online, we'll suggest to them to go home, file this online, you can pay online if they want to pay a ticket or something like that. That can all be done. We're going to try to do everything we can. The very first week, we are going to continue to issue marriage licenses, EPOs down on the first floor. We're going to try to keep that. So as you know, we also use that for courtrooms. We have to respect the courts and judges. And then we got to catch up on traffic. We haven't had traffic court for quite a while. And we're going to try to stagger that. Judge Elliott and myself met this morning on a plan to some of the courts that are going to be civil courts are going to be very, very busy. We're going to try to stagger those so that we have several judges hearing and spread it out. We'll have some of the judges, people don't realize how hard the DA and the attorneys and private work. Some of them might have 100 cases a day as far as hearing something. May not take but a few minutes. There's a lot of lawyers and a lot of people involved. And so, once again, our main thing is to keep people, make them responsible, social distance. We can accomplish that. We can figure out how to get them in the hallways, how to utilize the courtrooms, how to utilize the hallways, and outside. Just like if we'd had jury, we'd planned on the jury the 15th. We'd actually, our staff, I don't know if you saw us outside, we would put together a plan. We would have walked them around the west end of the building. We would have lined them up, taken them through the gate, had the guard want them, brought them in through the side door, and we had already worked it out with the judges that on Friday they would give us their list of how many each one of them would need. For instance, if Elliot needed 40, and those 40 would go straight to his courtroom with one of our clerks up there trying to spread them out. So, with help, we can get all this accomplished. We can do all this. They need some help as far as people in the hallways, but either way, we will do our very best to make it happen.
Have you reached out to the sheriff's office? Not
yet. I knew I was coming here. Keith had talked to me about a week ago. We talked about this. I knew he was coming here, so I figured.
I know most of the SROs have been transferred over to the jail.
Right.
And they're already shorthanded to begin with. So if they're as shorthanded as they say they are with everything, then it may be difficult for them to be able to ramp up staffing.
That's why I mentioned at the beginning of it is that possibly we could use some, instead of using the jail's officers, because they're shorthanded. If you know they need their officer, they can get
Well, I mean, they say they're shorthanded across the board.
I was thinking the school officers and the patrol officers might possibly work. Just a thought. I'm not telling the sheriff I can do his job. It's just a thought. It's our job.
Perhaps some reserve deputies.
Possibly. Anything we can get. You know, we may even try to bring in some temporary workers. It would take, and we may use some of our funds to bring in some temporary work. We're talking about that today at 3:00.
The alternative entries into the building, I know there's been some preliminary discussion in regard to that. Mr. Monroe's been involved in that, and the sheriff's office. Some of that also included possibly bringing people directly into the courthouse as opposed to bringing them through this facility.
Yes, there are two entrances into the courthouse. The west entrance is now closed, but could be opened up as an employee-only entrance, or however you choose.
Anything else, Jim?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Here. While item number 6, Mr. Hooton, would you care to address the group, sir?
If you want to.
Any questions for Mr. Hooton? Oklahoma County Treasurer, Oklahoma County Sheriff, or County Assessor's Office, any information or reports from them, from anyone?
Yet to hear from court clerks about we've heard some county clerks as well. Be nice to hear from the other offices, what they're considering, their plans to reopen and how they're looking at other staggering employees on their end. Or do they feel the southwest corner being an employee entrance only is a good idea? It'd just be nice to hear from them what their thoughts are. So
Certainly agree.
I don't know if we need to reach out to them and ask them.
I would be happy to, on behalf of the committee, if it's your wishes, to attempt to contact them, and nothing else, maybe our regular meeting next Monday.
Let me ask you this: did you send them the preliminary plan that you had put together on opening?
Yes, that went to all elected officials and BOCC.
Get any feedback?
No.
And David, that's what you said is the information that talks about continuing to work from home where possible, staggered work groups, et cetera.
Correct. I could certainly resend similar information along with CDC guidance for business reopening, that kind of stuff, and request to, if available, come to visit with us on Monday.
I'd appreciate it if you did that. Because myself, I think some sort of communication would be nice.
I can certainly do that. Further discussion, item number 6.
Motion to receive reports.
Second. Got a motion second to receive report. Roll call, Mr. Matthews. Aye. Mr. Blount. Aye. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. Thank you. Back to, sorry.
Move to reopen item number 6. The assessor is here.
Got a motion, do I hear a second? Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mr. Blount? Aye. Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. Thank you, Mr. Stein, for joining us.
Yeah, first time I've ever been to a bank lately, and with my mask on, I got the money. That's going on. I just wanted to, I was listening on the events, I wanted to let you know that we are currently in a working remotely system. We're able to transform our two floors of office space from about nearly 80 employees to remote offices all over in the homes of our employees. We have approximately 10 people in the office every day to be able to handle anything that needs to be handled in a personal nature. We, by appointment only, for documents that are required to be handled in person, and along with the treasurer's office, so coordinating with that to limit the number of people who have to come down. Almost everything we've done that we do in our office can be done electronically. We're trying to expand that next year with additional processes that will be able to be done remotely online. Part of the dilemma was that previously there had to be signatures and other documentation, but we hope that we'll be able to obtain some software for our system to be able to accomplish that in the future. We're currently being inundated with commercial properties and others that say the coronavirus has impacted the value of their homes. I hope you saw the article in the Daily Oklahoma on the business section about a week ago, where we were explaining to the public that we have to do things in a certain time frame. One of those is that when the bell rings on January 1st, the value is set for the previous year. That's one of the beauties of what we do in county government. We are always working on the available dollars that have already been established. We're not looking forward to predictions of what could be happening as far as revenue next year. Currently, we have about $1 billion of property that is not assessed for ad valorem purposes in Oklahoma because of the limitations on value, assessments of value every year. So will there be a dramatic change? We don't know. We hope not. We hope that we'll be seeing that little system that was set up by the Constitution and voters to limit the increases in assessed values to make sure that we do not have any troughs or peaks or valleys in the funding mechanism. And we're hoping that we'll be getting back to normal soon and the economy will recover, but there will be other companies that will be looking at their rental agreements and saying, why do we have $20,000 a month for a rental payment when we find out we can do everything remotely? And that will impact the value of businesses, buildings. The owners of those buildings will be down here talking to us about the value, and we'll be looking at those estimates of what they think's happened. So will it have a ripple effect? Sure. How much of an impact will it have on us? We don't know yet. We don't think it will have that much impact. We've got a revenue that comes into the county because of the limitations, but we'll be dealing with everyone that comes in a way to be able to answer their questions when they come in next year. But our offices, it's incredible how smoothly everything's been going. We're very happy with it. And if there's any questions that anybody has, please give them my number. 713-1201. My cell phone number is 405-361-9307, and we are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to answer questions and set up things that need to happen for any of the citizens of this county and anybody that has an interest in property around the world. And there's a lot of people that are investigating property in Oklahoma because it's a great value. But if there's any questions you have or you need any other information, we'll be happy to help you out.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
And putting your employees on remote quickly was great. Do you intend on that being a new thing for you, or what are your plans on repatriating individuals back into the building?
We appreciate the opportunity of being able to experiment with this. Whether it will be a continuation is a question that we're going to be evaluating. I believe that there may be an opportunity for us to, in a staggered way or in a rotating way, be able to afford the opportunity for employees to spend some limited time out of the office. A lot of the documents that we process, usually in the office, are now being done systematically over a period of time by packing up boxes and taking them to the homes of our employees. I prefer to have them more secure, but at the same time, it has worked very well. The other thing that we need to remember is that just because you have employees working remotely, and they say, I'm very productive at home because I'm working at home and I don't have any interruptions. That's right, because the people in the office that are here are taking care of your interruptions. They're answering your phone calls. They're directing those emails, and they're doing everything. So you're increasing the responsibilities of other employees. We're looking at it. It could be some changes, but our field appraisers, they're all doing their work remotely, and for the most part, when we're looking at what they do, almost all of it can be done on a computer to be able to figure out a path on where they need to be. Their mileage can be associated with that. Their download of that data that they change every day can be done through a Wi-Fi hotspot, and we can prevent them from necessarily having to come down. But when we have the customers, our citizens that come down and appeal those values, they need to visit with somebody in person. We're doing that all by phone right now. with the help of the citizens, but eventually we may very well have to have them back in the building and doing things and helping them get their tasks scheduled and accomplished. But it's transforming. I think it'll have more of an effect on private businesses. I've already talked to a couple of those companies that have decided that this teleworking is really working out well. And when they're looking at the amount of money they have to spend for rental space and buildings, and that's when we're going to be talking about the ripple effect on what's going to happen in Oklahoma City. Anyway, I heard you all visiting. I thought I'd come down and answer any questions you have and give you a little update.
Appreciate that. Do you have any, in your office, any benchmarks or any deadlines or anything in the next few months that would cause a spike in traffic that you foresee?
Got about 500 to 600 entities, commercial and residential property owners who have appealed the value that we set for last year. Many of them could be associated with what's happened since the beginning of the year, which is information that we'll have to evaluate next year. We will reject them for this year because they're not talking about the same data set we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We've already visited with the Board of Equalization, which is the entity, the 3 members, the excise board members, who will be hearing those appeals if they're unsatisfied with what we provide them from the assessor's office. And the board is aware of the system and when the bell rings and what information can be used to assess those values based for last year. And that's always a good thing. They're also going to be using this room to be able to create that social distancing. And it's a difference for them, different year for them as well. I think that everyone's concerned whether they'd be able to handle the numbers, and the numbers seem to be consistent. For Oklahoma County, it's incredibly low, the number of appeals that we had. Some counties, they had 30,000 people going down in Texas. In Texas, El Paso, they had 30,000 people who came down and appealed their values. We have about 78 that actually appealed the BOE. In Oklahoma County, it's less than 0.5% of the number of letters that we send out every year. So, and I think that's because of the website. They can see all the data that they have and compare values and see what happens in their neighborhood. So it helps us and it helps reduce the traffic down here. So it seems to be a typical year as far as appeals go. Thank you all for your service.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Motion to receive.
Second?
Motion second to receive. Mr. Matthews? Aye. Mr. Blau? Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. Thank you. Back to item number 4, discussion review possible action regarding presentation BOCC departments. Do we need to reopen that for any BOCC departments or information from them?
Yeah, move to reopen.
Yes.
Motion second. Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, I just want to bring back to this committee that,
Aye.
Aye.
oh, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to bring back to the committee that we continue to see a number of fraudulent unemployment claims. We're up to, that we know of, about 20 in the county. Karen Kent from my office is handling those on an individual basis. The affidavit is being filed by the individual with OESC for a fraudulent claim, and make aware to our elected officials and department heads that if they receive information on an unemployment claim for one of their employees, let us know. We'll be happy to deal with that from our office. We've got a relationship established with OESC and with the fraud department there, and appreciate the district attorney's office for helping us get that all set up. And I believe OSBI has been made aware of it through Mr. Prater's office as well. We don't know that anybody has actually gotten any unemployment funds on any fraudulent claims from Oklahoma County. They did not share, OESC did not share that information with us, but want to make people aware that they're out there rampant, and we're addressing them as quickly as we know about them.
Good. Questions from Mr. Matthews? Thank you, Dan. Any other BOCC department-related information that needs to be shared with the group? I would entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call, Mr. Matthews.
Aye.
Mr. Blau.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Barnes is an aye. Thank you. Item number 5, discussion review possible action regarding presentation from facilities management. Do we need to open that item? I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mr. Blount?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Barnes is an aye. Yes, sir.
We're working on developing a protocol for additional cleaning. It's been suggested too that we pay attention to some of the seating in the courthouse and in the annex where there is fabric. Cushions, for example, in the jury assembly room, that was a great suggestion made to me that be removed so there's only a solid surface that can be disinfected. We're working on those measures, but I believe, I feel we need to have something put in place fairly quickly as far as what surfaces need to be cleaned and how often. Yes. Any help would be great.
But what are you looking for? All right, let me rephrase that. How many more additional individuals do you think we need to keep the standard that we have had here lately with obviously a very small amount of the employees and public that are in the building? We want to keep that up. How many more people are you going to need?
Are you trying to draw a relationship between the additional cleaning people we have and the number of people that are in the building now to apply that factor when we bring
The public
back?
Yes.
I'm not sure how many people come in the building ordinarily. I'm certain it's in the thousands. The last time we did this, had a conversation like this, it was in relation to elevator ridership and reliability. I think we had 4,000 people a day, 4,000 people, something like that. Bringing 100 people in, and we're using 6 daytime janitorial staff to disinfect elevators, push bars, door knobs, those kinds of things. And then depending on how many times a day you want this to be accomplished, if you take one courtroom, for example, you disinfect in the morning, at noon when they're closed, and then in the evening in preparation for the following day. At least one person per courtroom to accomplish that. 30 additional people, 40 additional people by the time you include the offices in this building. It's a huge number. Plus the material, the cleaning solutions and disinfectant.
Of which are difficult to come by right now.
And I think that's getting easier. I think that's,
Janitorial service, which has probably got their own surplus, right?
I don't know if they have surplus.
Okay.
I don't know what the current daily usage is now. We've got material enough to last us into the next month. But certainly if bleach is available, we can use that, bleach solution. That goes a long way. It would be trying to find the 30 or 40 people necessary to accomplish this. It can be done.
Would it be unreasonable to request that numbers and quantities and such based on current usage and anticipated openings, that we get some kind of...
If you want me to use the percentage of cleaning people, you've got 6% basically. So
I would think by courtroom, current staff that's over there, we need to talk to the courts to say, are they going to wipe down their own courtrooms? Just to necessarily hire 40 more people just to wipe down things that to be done by staff currently there.
Interesting, broach the question first with maybe Renee or someone representing that group. See what their plans or thoughts or ideas were.
I will.
I think,
All right, let's get back to my 2-track commitment. We can do that, absolutely. But let's keep the other one going just in case. And then whichever one is going to be the best, we'll go with that. Depending on the other one.
Ideally, I think one person per space.
That's fine. And again,
If you want to do the job properly and you do it 3 times a day, and even then, all it takes is one individual to come in and sit too close to someone else.
we need to reach out to Renee, find out what they're willing to do, what they can do, and then run this secondary track of.
And she'll ask the question to me, what's the BOCC willing to do? It always goes there.
Right. I'm sure I'm aware of what the answer is going to be when we ask
Sure.
the courts to do something next.
But there needs to be some definition of what needs to be done regardless of Renee's approach or the BOCC's. There should be some definite plan in place, and then we decide how we're going to fill the spots necessary. Form follows function.
Absolutely. So adding 30 to 40 individuals,
If that's what it takes.
I mean, we need to talk to our current provider, see if they can even meet that. And then what's that cost going to be?
I understand, but is it going to be one person per courtroom 3 times a day, and then we apply the people?
Well, that's
We
fine.
really need a better starting point than this, and the CARES Act information that you gave is so open and non-specific. I'm not an epidemiologist.
It's still going to be related back to city, county, state, and CDC guidance as to what's really necessary.
It's been suggested too that we follow some other measures from the private sector, but I'm afraid there's so much to be missed here. I would rather defer to some professional on this.
Talking about the cleaning of the courtrooms, you're saying 3 times a day, and I believe that Mr. Warren made a good point, is clean up either at the end of the day, which would take care of it for the first half of the following day, and then again midday. So there's 2 cleanings taking place there. There has been some earlier discussion about staggering courtroom timing and scheduling. If some of that were to be achievable, I don't know that it is or is not, but if some of that would be achievable and some of that staff, as opposed to if I were doing cleaning first thing in the morning or at the end of the day and then waiting for midday, that's a lot of downtime for me in between cleanings. But if there was some staggering there and understanding logistics of that scheduling could be pretty difficult.
But again, I need to know how often this needs to take place in order to determine a plan for people. I mean, sitting here just now, I watched 2 elected officials come up and hold this platform in the same place.
Sure.
I'm not touching it. I mean, it's just something
Sure, it's a natural deal.
people do without thinking.
Sure.
So all the benches, if I sit down in a courtroom and I put my hands down, or when I have to get up, I put my hands on the back in front of me. If I go through the railing entry into the inner part of the courtroom or approach the judge's bench, and I put my hands here and there. How many people do that? How many times a day? Even though you're staggering or limiting the public. I think if we're going to err, we err on the side of caution. If we have one person in a courtroom and that's all that person does is sits and watches and wipes after people, if you're going to try and do the right thing.
Well, a single cough or sneeze and it's all off anyway.
Sure.
Very good.
Have you gotten any estimates on what it would cost to do the fogging, the deep cleaning that we've talked about previously for this building and the courthouse?
We looked at that, but the numbers were all over the place at the time. And I think the latest figure we got was a 5 cent or 10 cent a square foot number.
What does that equate to?
It was staggering sum to do the entire complex. I think you'd be better off with people in Clorox wipes. Honestly.
And then a periodic deep clean possibly. I think, as that market has changed, I'm sure there's a lot of new vendors and a lot of new products and a lot of new processes, and certainly more to come in the next few weeks or months.
May 18th, that's 2 weeks. You know, we need to develop some kind of a plan today, now, so we can begin to be prepared. Nope.
Looking for guidance, I certainly understand.
I'll offer this as help.
Thank you.
Yeah. Completely unrelated to the cleaning of the courtroom, but it is important. As I understand it, our elevator, social distancing is to expire the 30th. Do I recall that correctly?
I think that's right.
I think it would be beneficial, given that the guidance is to continue social distancing through the end of May, that this group would make a recommendation that Mr. Monroe extend that, not only for this building, for the courthouse. You know, if people get upset, they have to wait a little bit longer. It just so happened that I heard a neat little tidbit from Bob Long, St. Luke's United Methodist Church this morning, talking about they had hired this brain trust. There was a group that had offices in a high-rise in New York, and the employees were rather upset that they had to wait on the elevators. So they hired this guy and spent lots of money to think outside the box, and his solution was to hang full-length mirrors at the elevators so people would look at themselves and forget that they're waiting on an elevator. So,
Did it work?
it did. Now I know why there's one in the basement.
I thought that was just for selfies.
But in all seriousness, you know, we can't on one hand say we need to do X, Y, and Z, but on the most practical steps that can be taken, disregard those.
Right.
And so, you know, hey, I love riding an elevator, but I'm capable of taking the stairs. You know, those that really need the elevators need the elevators. If you need to wait a little bit longer, you need to wait a little bit longer.
I would echo that encouragement to Mr. Monroe to have that extended, whether that's through a BOCC action or PBA or both.
Well, I think honestly, everything that we're trying to accomplish, what the court clerk is trying to do, is going to extend the time necessary to accomplish the tasks we need to accomplish here. And that's just going to have to be understood, and elevator traffic will have to wait. You know?
Agree. That also, again, causes me to think the very same question I have for Mr. Warren about stacking people up at the vestibule, at the lobby, and out on the sidewalk. And of course, when we had the same situation in winter weather and we had a delayed opening, there was a great deal of consternation and discussion about exposure to the elements. And if we have inclement weather, whether it's rain or whatever it may be, those discussions will come up again. There's simply no place to house people without violation of the very principles that we're discussing. So again, that to me in my P brain gets back to the staggering issue. Staggering of schedules, staggering of entrances to try and eliminate the bulk coming to a single point.
Staggering of court times.
That was discussed early on, several weeks in this group. We actually had people that were talking about staggering of court time, staggering of jury assemblies, staggering of bringing in potential jurors, all of those factors.
Yeah, you know, as I mentioned yesterday, and we kind of heard, that the largest number generator for traffic in this building are the courts, right? And striking the balance between the safety of our employees and the safety of the public, and the need of the court to conduct business. And that's what Keith is asking us for. And I understand, and I appreciate, and I've stepped into that world a couple of times, and been reviewed. And so I'm trying to balance and think carefully before I offer you some suggestions. And one of those suggestions is, as we've all learned through this, we don't necessarily have to conduct business in the same way that we've always done it.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, that is inclusive of all of us, not just a certain portion of governmental entities and stuff. And so we may need to, you know, we're trying to be a good partner and come up with solutions. Well, it takes two to dance. And while I understand that 8 to 5 is great, and don't get me wrong, I understand that courts work beyond 5 o'clock. I know that juries are in, sessions are going later. I recognize that. But, you know, there are some discussions that probably need to be had. I mentioned the other day, alternating courtrooms. It sounds like, you know, there's a lot of those discussions going on, and Mr. Warren is working very, very hard, and it sounds like a lot of that is happening.
Right.
So, as soon as I can come up with something, I'll throw it out there. I'm not bashful. I will.
Thank you. You know, I think it's easy for some people to forget that there are other at-risk folks that don't come down here. I have an at-risk person in my family, and although it might take a little bit to kill me, it doesn't take much to take my father out. So, you know, I take something there, obviously, that's a bad thing. So anything we can do here to make sure that we don't transmit anything.
Absolutely.
And I will say, relates to Keith, that go back to something that Mr. Warren said and touched on. The provision of masks to the public is as much about the safety of our employees as it is about the safety of the public. And, you know, when you're talking, in essence, it's a hygiene product. We provide hygiene products to the public every day in the store, whether it be toilet paper, napkins, or soap.
For hand sanitizer.
It's a continuation of it, you're right.
So, you know, I think perhaps taking another look at that might be worthy.
Do that. I will, in addition to reaching out to the other elected officials, as we discussed earlier, I will touch base also with Renee and ask that she relay what discussions have been taking place in the courthouse, whether with presiding judge or others in regard to this, and see if we can revisit the staggering issue, what options might be viable to them, and bring some of that information to us so we can also discuss that and just see what kind of genuine options are available there.
You know, one of the concerns has been stacking up in the lobby down here when people come in. But the sheriff's office has 2 machines down there, and they're only operating one. Could the other one be activated and help move people through on a quicker basis so that they're not stacking up and having to go outside?
They do that when it gets busy.
Not even then. Or could it be moved to the west entrance of the courthouse and used over there and put some signage out to direct people to the east and west entrances of the courthouse to help alleviate some of this here as well?
But Dan, to your point, and I don't know if what I'm about to say even has anything to amount to hill beans, but it's not just having the equipment, it's having the staffing to be able to operate the equipment. And that would need to be taken into consideration as well.
And I would agree with that.
Heck, we could put one in ICB. Oh, wait, we tried that.
Novel idea.
If not mistaken, the sheriff's office, and I could be corrected, may actually have some portable machines as well that might be, at least in the interim, for this. Let's touch base there.
Again, I want specifics. How often we clean, what we clean, so I can begin to prepare here.
Yeah, and Keith, I think all of us have been here long enough to know that we come up with that specific plan on day one. It probably won't be the plan anymore, given that this thing just evolves continually.
I understand, but I have to have something now beyond the 6 people I have.
Well, and I think Miles and Michael have thrown out at least beginning steps, right? Find out how much it costs, do they have the capability to do it, et cetera. Michael is suggesting have the courts do it themselves. Right, we get answers.
Yeah,
to those.
it's still a paper. I need something concrete. If I begin to
To
plan,
begin to have that concrete plan, we need to have at least a starting point to build off of, and I think that's what Miles has said. I don't, what, did I hear that wrong, Miles?
what I want is someone to tell me how often surfaces should be cleaned. I don't want to know anything about the cost. I just want to know how often those surfaces need to be cleaned and what surfaces need to be cleaned.
How often are they being cleaned in the courtrooms that are being used now?
They're not.
Why?
Well, I say they're not. They're going through once in the evening. I'm sorry, that was wrong.
So, I mean, why aren't we doing it twice a day now?
They're not being utilized, and we don't have manpower for that.
Well,
Okay,
some
so I've been to the doctor recently, right? I mean, they clean regularly anyway, but now, as soon as one patient leaves, they're cleaning. As soon as I leave here, probably the best practice would be for somebody to come in and wipe behind me.
Mhm.
This is what Kathy does. Credit to Kathy.
And she provides us
Yeah.
with great hand sanitizer.
Well, do we begin with some measure like that and then scale back as we learn, as we become
That's what I'm saying. This is gonna be a battle of attrition. We're gonna throw as much at this as we possibly can in the beginning. I mean, just throw everything we got at it, and then let's start backing off and see what we can back off on. That's what I'm saying. Find out if we can get 30 or 40 people, because if we can't even get that 30 or 40 people, we're gonna have to.
I don't know that
we're
it
gonna have
takes
to move
30
this
or
up.
40 people. I need to be told what to clean.
Well, what to clean and how often to clean comes back to guidance from so-called health professionals and what their recommendations
Do we
are.
have one?
The problem is the specific guidance is not there. I've been looking at ad nauseum to these kinds of details and these kind of documents from city, county, from state, from CDC. And all they say is do it. They don't say on a schedule. They don't say per capita of people coming through. There's none of that specific guidance. And obviously with varying populations, that's going to be different. Population that we have in-house here that are keeping our own workspaces clean as opposed to general public filing through. That's a pretty broad dynamic. I don't know that you're going to get specific pinpoint. I think what Mr. Blau is saying, I would agree with, that Miles and Michael have set some broad parameters, and it's going to end up likely somewhere in between that. But that gives a scope at least to look at and a couple of starting points. Discussions with Renee, what they may be able to do in the court themselves, as opposed to the other extreme and the other potentiality of large numbers of staff, large quantities of cleaning material, and what that would look like. Just I would say set a parameter, say clean twice a day, all spaces, just like you were doing in this facility when you were doing a wipe down twice a day. We didn't have any guidance that said every touch surface twice a day here. We identified a target and we went after it, and it's proven effective.
I'll ask Renee what the target is.
Are all courtrooms going to open on May 18th, or is it just the civil?
I'm not sure how-
Civil on May 18th. There's not gonna be any jury trials or anything of that sort until after.
Okay.
I mean, the civil stuff, a lot to what Joe has said, and the courts are doing a good job at
Fantastic.
surviving in this difficult situation.
Right.
When it comes to civil courts, there's a lot of things that we could do to help alleviate the rush. And it's going to be scheduling. It's going to be remote. It's going to be a lot of really innovative thinking. We do not have to return to the way that it was before. This is a great opportunity to move forward. We have an opportunity to do the types of things and make the types of infrastructural investments now to move us forward. And that's what I would like to see from the courts, from the court clerk, from every office that we've got. We've got money. they're asking us to make these infrastructure investments to move us forward and to make people safer and to continue by the same CDC guidelines that we're under today. What I'm not seeing is a lot of movement from individuals in wanting to move forward as much as I'm seeing is to let's get back to the way it was before.
Yeah.
And that's great. If we want to move back to the way it was before, that's fine. But I think we've seen examples by Warren, Hooten, Stein, Bloomer. We've seen examples across the board of people wanting to modernize county government. And our biggest hurdle for the 12 years that I've been here in modernizing county government has been money. Well, we don't have the money to buy this program. We don't have the money to buy these computers. Let's go. We got it.
Priorities.
We have $47 million. Let's go. All right. So over.
Any further comment, discussion for Mr. Monroe?
So do we want to make this back to my elevator, a recommendation from this group that to the BOCC and the PDA that we extend at least through, I mean, jury trials, which are a large driver, we just heard aren't going to start back until August.
Yeah.
That we continue the 2 per car suggestion, limitation.
I'd recommend through the end of May to align with other guidance on other activities. Yeah.
That would be my motion, that we would recommend to the PPA and the BOCC to extend the limitation to 2 individuals per car until the end of May for the annex and PDA properties, as well as the courthouse.
One in the ICB.
Annex PDA properties.
Want me to put that on the agenda? Or will this body do it?
Well, he's making a motion or a recommendation from this committee. Correct.
Correct.
Is there a reason you left it in May? Why wouldn't we go to June? Do we have the ability to go to June?
I think, well,
Additional guidance.
I think there's 30 days.
Mild.
yeah, I've tried to tie all my statements to what the guidance has been with regard to, at least in Oklahoma, continuing our social distancing through May, so as to the peak they say we've hit continues to be the peak that we've hit.
Right.
And that's why I'm May.
Well, that gives us a little over 30 days too, that any changes or dynamics that we can evaluate, and we can always re-up it, extend it or shorten.
Okay. Second.
Would there be any, is there any difference whether you're masked or not? Or if it's just a matter of 6 feet away, no matter what?
The individuals that come into the building, previous things I've read is, they've done it from one person with a mask and nobody else with a mask, and they put a percentage on it. And then it gets down to, if you've got a mask and I've got a mask, it's less than 1% that either you or I were a carrier would get it from you or I. That would be everybody wearing them. So, and that kind of gets to the fact of Keith, David, and Joe have said it, is providing masks similar to providing toilet paper and paper towels in a bathroom at this point. Have we reached that point with this?
And I guess pertinent to this motion, if 2 masked individuals are on a box and a 3rd one also masked wants to ride up with them, our suggestion of, no, only 2 of you can be in this box.
Yeah.
Where are we at on that?
If this virus could be seen, and if it was green, and I was green and had the virus, would you wear a mask as far away from me as you are? I think everybody would do everything they could to protect themselves. The fact that it's unseen, I think, cripples people.
Michael, I appreciate, do people wearing a mask, do they all get on together? Like, for simplicity's sake, and by saying, well, if 2 people or 4 or 10 or 20 have masks on, they can all get on the elevator, it undoes what it is we're attempting to do, and that's follow the guidance of the CDC and the recommended health experts that you social distance. And so there is, for me, it's easy, it's simple, 2 people per car.
It's the 6 foot. You can't get more than 2 inside of an elevator with 6 foot.
Right.
And that's really,
That's pushing it.
that's where that's based on. It's not a, if you,
Well, I'm
if
just
there,
asking.
if there were 3 people, if you
No,
could do it.
no, I appreciate
if there
the
were 3
question,
people, because we're gonna have problems with elevators.
Because there's
You're
days
absolutely-
when you go to the requirements of an elevator and you can say, well, they might still have room for you, but that weight limit is gone. So, but I was just asking, because there are going to be some, when they go to open May 18th, we are going to have some very long lines
Yes, we
on
are.
the, whatever floor you're trying to get on an elevator.
Yeah.
And out the front door.
That's where we were talking about the scheduling and doing those types of things to alleviate them and the technology and et cetera. We could certainly reduce our traffic down here and increase social distancing, so.
So we have a motion and a second.
Joe, if you would please repeat your motion for us for clarity.
Yeah. That we would, that this group would recommend to the Board of County Commissioners and the Public Buildings Authority that we extend the limit on elevator ridership in all PBA properties, the county annex, and the county courthouse to 2 per car through May 31st, I believe. Is that right? Or 30?
1 per car,
Correct. Cody's correct. I'm being corrected that it's the ridership limit would be 2 in the annex and the courthouse, and 1 per car in ICB and the parking garages. Yeah.
June 1st will be a Monday, 31st is a Sunday.
Yes.
So through the end of May, that's your motion. All right, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, Mr. Matthews. Aye. Mr. Blau.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor. Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Barnes is an aye. Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Monroe in regards to facility maintenance? Hearing none, entertain a motion to accept the report under item 5.
So,
Second. Motion and a second. Roll call, Mr. Matthews. Aye. Mr. Blau.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor. Mr. Davidson.
aye.
Barnes is an aye. Okay. All right, we covered item number 6. Item number 7, we've got a meeting Monday, May 4th, BOCC room at noon. And any board comments? Mr. Matthews?
None.
Mr. Blau?
Are we recessing until Friday? Is that correct?
Yeah, I was going to pick that up.
Okay.
It's board comments, so.
Yeah, no, I was just commenting that I was unsure as to whether or not we were recessing or adjourning.
Oh, I just want to make sure you weren't asking a question.
Commenting on my unsure status.
Okay. Mr. Taylor? Mr. Davis?
No, thank you.
And none from me, other than I will get that information to the elected officials that we discussed earlier in the meeting and touch base with Renee also. And need a motion to go into recess until, I believe, I'll let you state your motion. Friday noon.
I think Miles has suggested noon to reconvene an event of technical difficulty, so let's just keep noon. Noon Friday, this room or via video.
Sounds good. Second.
Got a motion second to recess until noon Friday, May 1st, in VOCC room or electronically. Roll call, Mr. Matthews. Aye. Mr. Blau. Aye. Mr. Taylor.
No.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
And Barnes is an aye. Motion passed. I believe that concludes. We are in recess. Thank you.
The Song of Modernization. Let's look. That's a